Lovelies, welcome back to the channel Style by C. Today's tutorial was inspired by Lemma's Empire, a short. So do subscribe to the channel, share to friends, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. So let's dive into it, and don't forget to also turn on your notification bell. Alright, so first thing first, you're going to be marking the full length of our short. So I'm going to be removing 1 inch from my short measurement. So from the tip -1 to 24 inches, that's the length I'm working with. You go ahead and mark your own length. Having done this now, the next thing I'm going to mark is from this tip. Now I'm also going to mark -1 to my crotch depth. Okay, so to get your crotch depth, either you measure it from your waist to down your crotch, or you divide your hip measurement by 4 and you add 1 inch to yours. All right, so mine is 10.5 inches. The next thing I will mark is also my hip measurement, which is going to be at 8 inches here. I'll go ahead and make a rule across. And this is what I have. Okay, so this is our hip, waist, crotch, and hemline. All right, so the next thing to do now is you're going to divide your hip measurements by 4, add 1 inch for seam allowance. So my hip measurement is 9.5 plus 1 inch, making it 10.5 inches. I'll mark it on my hip line like so. I'll mark it on my crotch line, crotch depth line like so. I'll also go ahead and mark it on my waistline. Then connect this using your rule. Having done this now, the next thing you're going to go ahead to measure is your lap measurements, your upper lap measurements. All right, so you take the measurement of your upper lap to know how many inches it is. So mine is 24 inches, and when I divide it by 2, I'm going to have 12 inches. You add 1 inch for your seam allowance. So you mark it on your, coming to your crotch line, which is here. Go ahead and mark your 12 inches, or mark your own measurements. So this is mine here. Now I'm going to be connecting from this to the hip line, which is here. And this is what I have. Having done this now, I'll come to this waist area, take my waist measurements, divide it by 4, you add 1 inch to it. Then now I'm going to be adding extra. I have 7.25 inches. When I add 1 inch, I'm going to be having 8.25 inches. Now I'm going to be adding another 1 inch for my dart. Okay, and this is where my dart is. All right, now I'm going to be connecting it to my hip, then to the crotch line. So from here, you go ahead and connect to your hip, down to your crotch line. Okay, so now we're going to come to the hem of our dress, but first of all, we're going to measure what we have here. So when I take measurement of what I have, I have 12 inches. I'll go ahead and mark it on my hemline, which is here. This is going to actually be a free shot. That is why I'm not doing too much to it. So, but if it's normal, maybe a pencil shot, you go ahead and shape your hemline. But because of this, I'm just going to make a stretch through, because we're still going to splash it. Okay, so this is what I have. I'll go ahead and mark this place downward. You can decide to come in a little to shape it here. Then from here, you adjust it a little. And this is what we have. So we're going to be working with this instead of this. So what I removed at this bottom part was 1 inch here, half an inch on the side. Okay, so having done this now, the next thing I'm going to do is, this is the side of my distance. I'm going to come down by 1 inch here at this point, 1 inch. Now I'm going to be connecting to my waistline, which is here. this I've done now. The next thing to do is I'm going to mark my bust palm measurements, that is my nipple to nipple measurements on this. I'm using it for my darts. So I have 4 inches, and this is where my 4 inches lies. I'm going to come down to 4 inches again for my dart depth. You can come down to 4.5 to 5 inches if you're on the large side. This is what I have. Now for my dart intake, I'm going to mark half inch on both sides because I added extra 1 inch for my dart allowance. And this is what I have. Now from there, I'm going to mark it down to this end. This is what we have. Okay, so we'll go ahead to cut out this piece. I'm not cutting off these darts for now, but I'll come back to it later. Now we'll be using this pattern paper to cut out for our back piece. So guys, now I place my front piece on top of another pattern paper. On the side here, that's from this center area, I'm going to be marking 2 inches from the up. I'll also go ahead and mark the center at this point. And having done this now, connect them using a rule. So this is what we have, guys. So the next thing to do is just the same way we made the curve here, we're also going to go ahead and make a curve at this point. All right, so use your curve rule or you can use your freehand. Just make a curve inwards, then go ahead and cut it out. And this is what we have. Now for our front piece, I'm going to go ahead and now cut out the line I marked earlier, the slope in front. I'll go ahead to cut it out, which I've done so. Then I'll fold in my dart. Okay, so before folding in this dart now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and extend this dart line I have here down to the bottom of this short. And this is what I have. I will explain later. This is where we're going to be splashing this. We're going to use it to, we're going to cut it open and splash it. Now I'm going to bring the back. I'm also going to mark my dart intake on this back short piece. All right. want to take note of where my dart is at the back piece. Okay. So the same measurement I used for the front, that's the same measurement I'll also be using for this back. Then I'll also come down by 4 inches. I'll go ahead and mark half an inch on both sides of the line. Connect it to this dart depth. This is what we have. Now we're going to also mark, extend this our dart leg down to the bottom of the shirt. We're going to be using this to splash. Okay, so this is what we have. Now go ahead and close up your darts. And this is what we have. Now we're going to be splashing this. So what I'm going to do here now is to cut this open. I'm cutting it all the way out, and this is what I have. I'm not having two pieces. Now I'm going to be introducing. So guys, the next thing I went ahead to do now was to place my splash paper on another pattern paper, and this is what I have. All right, I went ahead to spread it. So I have about some inches here. Let's measure and see what we have. Please note you can still decide to spread it more. So I have about 9.5 inches here. So I'm going to go ahead and connect the two legs together. All right. So I'm going to be using the cut part of this rule for that. Having done this now, I'll cut this piece off. So yeah, if you want to make a flat pants, you can go ahead and use this. I think mine is not that wide. Yes, it's not that properly wide, but if you want to just make a flat shirt without pleats, you can go ahead and use this for it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do this same thing I did here for my back piece. Please note you can decide to make it more wider. So guys, the next thing we're going to go ahead to do now is you're going to be making a roll at the center of this paper. Okay, so this is my front piece. This is what we have for our front, and this is what we have for our back. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and make a roll at the center of this splash I've made already. After doing this, I'll go ahead and cut it open. And this is what I have. I'll keep this aside. All right, I'm also going to do the same thing for my back piece. Please note you can decide to just leave your back piece without a plate. All right, it's not compulsory that you're going to do for the back and the front. You can decide not to. So you can decide not to pleat for your back, but if you want to pleat for your back, go ahead and do and splash it too. I think I'll be leaving this because of fabric. I don't have sufficient fabric for this, so I'll be pleating only my front piece. Guys, the next thing I went ahead was to place it on top of another pattern paper. Okay, and I left few inches in between. So this is my front pattern pieces we spread last. So now I place it difference between here and here, the two of them, difference between here and here. I have 5 inches difference. Okay, that's what I'm going to be using for my pleats because I want it to be full. All right, so you can use 4 inches, you can use 6 inches, depending on how wide you want your pleats to be. All right, so for this I'm using 5 inches for mine. Now I'll go ahead and cut out. So this is my front piece. I'm going to go ahead and mark it as my front F. So this is what I'm going to be using to cut out my front piece. Then while sewing, we're going to pleat this inwards, all right, to give us that pleat effect as we have in the picture. The first thing first you have to do to your after transferring your pattern paper to your fabric is to hem the bottom of your shirt or your trouser, okay, which I've gone ahead to do. All right, now I went ahead and also pleated my shorts, the front. Remember, we're not pleating the back, but if you want to pleat your back, the choice is totally yours. So I've gone ahead to pleat my back, and I'm having half of my quarter of my waist measurement here. Okay, so pleat yours, ensure that you have quarter of your waist measurement plus 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, you'll be using the 1 inch for stitching on this side. Having done that, now you introduce your back piece. Okay, so this is my back piece. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch on the side. So if you're attaching a pocket to yours, fine and good, run half an inch, leave 7 inches spacing for your pockets and close it down. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do this now. At this point now, I have to increase, like reduce my crotch depth line because the thing is shortened after all the dart manipulation, splashing and spreading. It's reduced entirely. So from your waistline, you're going to come down to your actual crotch depth, measure it or measure it to be sure of what you have. Okay, then you're going to add extra inches. Like my crotch depth is about 11 to 11 and a half inches. Okay, so I'm going to be adding extra 1 to 1.5 or 1 to 2 inches, so that by the time we're done sewing it will lap very well because this is actually a flay short. All right, so I'm going to make the curve just like what we have earlier, then go ahead and cut it out. Yeah, so guys, the next thing I had to do was to join the in between the laps area, that is the centerpiece of my shorts. I've gone ahead to join it. Okay, now we're going to be joining these two legs together, that is this leg and this leg together. So you have to pick up the front this way, pick up this front, place them right side facing each other. So you're going to start from this tip, run a stitch. Remember, you use 1 inch, so you have basically use half inch for the other side. You're using half inch on this side too. Please ensure that these two centers align together, is very important. All right, so you're going to run a stitch till you get to this back piece, then start making a slight curve inwards. They're going to be leaving about 10 inches, 8 to 10 inches or less for your zip allowance. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go ahead to do now. Guys, the next thing we're going to go ahead now to cut out is the band, and the band is going to go around the waist area. I actually use 4 inches for my band, that is 2 inches on a fold for my band, but for this tutorial I'm going to recommend using like 3 inches to 4 inches for your band, so it's going to be wider, like more bolder on your waist. All right, so the choice is totally yours on what you want to actually use. So guys, this is what we're going to do now. All right, there are different ways to join your band. You can decide to do an inseam for your band, but for mine I'm just going ahead to fix it. So I'm going to pick up my band, fold it into two this way. Now I'm going to place it on the waist area, starting from this point. This is my back. I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch till I get to the other end of my back piece. Okay,